Alright guys, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to this tournament showdown. It's going to be myself on Nurgle with Tamurkhan facing off against Khorne, who's going to be helmed by Solo Spaghetto and Valkia the Bloody here on the Imperial Road. And it's time for a big old scary melee fight. Now, Khorne's actually been doing pretty well in tournaments. I believe as of the time of this recording, our first two tournaments, they have like a 55% win rate, which is pretty good. Granted, it's a very small sample size of games, but I've been seeing high-level players pick them in series, and the cost reductions they got to some of their units has been making a bit of a difference, I think. Now, for old Tammy in this matchup is, I think, not bad at all. He does have anti-large and is a really good fighter, also buffs nearby units with his, and debuffs enemy units with Rotting Host and the Black Cleaver. Black Cleaver, of course, saucing up your units to fight, and the Rotting Host is going to be debuffing the Khorne units. It's only 5%, but, you know, every little bit matters. But Khorne Minotaurs of Khorne in tandem with the Fleshhounds are extremely common, so I felt his anti-large would be good. The meta, historically speaking, has been like Kugath, just like a big old mouth-breathing Kugath Mortis engine. Then what Khorne has to do is basically play the other two objectives and play a little bit more Benny Hill. But I wanted to have a more dynamic mobile build that could address Khorne's mobility if need be, and then also be respectable in a blob fight. So in the back, we got Marauders of Khorne and some Nurglings going to be holding this point. 2 units of Plague Bearers, 1 unit of basic Plague Bearers as well here in the back. Cultists, so we wanted to have stacking debuffs because I know that Khorne can certainly fight well. So we do have the icon of Eternal Virulence. So when this is fully active, it's going to be negative 20%. Tamurkhan's going to be another 5%, so 25% mitigation. And then we got 8% base weapon damage right here. So we have a lot of stacking debuffs there in tandem with the poison, right? So poison's going to be lowering you by another 15%. So huge damage debuff on the Khorne units here, which is I'm hoping will do well for me. Couple horsemen, you need to be able to contest mobility. Nurgle's such a slow faction that I feel like in almost every single matchup, you never want to leave home without Marauder horsemen. You can, but typically having a couple, I think, is just such a staple, especially against like Khorne Tors and some of the heavy scary stuff that Khorne can bring. So Khorne does have the Marauder horsemen of throwing axes here for themselves. Very good fighters, 44 melee attack, excellent against light infantry. In the front, it's going to be Marauders of Khorne, and my favorite part of this build is going to be the dreaded double chosen of Khorne. 76 weapon strength on those bad boys, and not to mention fire damage, making them an excellent tool against my healing and the blobs. Everything's going to be on fire, basically, which will mitigate my healing. I love this build from Khorne, and Solo's a great player. He wins tournaments all the time and is very good, so see how it goes. So a little bit of skirmishing up on the middle point. Skirmishing does matter now in domination, whereas before it wasn't quite as relevant because the infantry could always get to the points on time. And I unfortunately don't get it. It was very close, but the Plague Bearers will be arriving, but it looks like Khorne is going to be able to flip that objective, which is a little bit rough for me, but, you know, it was good positioning for my opponent's Hounds of the Blood hunt. So we're on our way up. Here we got some Marauders getting ready to support the flank and maybe push back these. And Valkia looks like she's maybe going to be descending in to try and push me off the objective. We'll have to see. And Valkia versus Tamurkhan. Valkia should do pretty well there with her anti-large, but Tammy does have a lot more HP and is going to be much tankier. We do see the Slout Gear going down for a second. I was like, what witchcraft is this from Khorne? They don't have magic. But the fight is on, and the Barons of the Bog, here they come. Another big debuff, so that's going to be another 10% debuff on weapon damage. And they also do help my nearby units with Vigor, which is very cool. So if you're going for like a big stat debuffing blob, Barons of the Bog are a staple for sure. And they're also a really good counter against any Khorne infantry, Exalted Bloodletters, whatever, you name it. Unless Khorne decides to come in with like, you know, halberds or something like that. So here, the Marauder Horseman with Throwing Axe is going to be threatening my back objective, and I do see this coming, so I respond with a Pestigore summon. Pestigore is going to be moving up. Meanwhile, the Plague Bearers just tanking it like champs in the front against some Marauders, and they'll trade well into those for sure. Marauders of Khorne, though, are respectable fighters with high MD, and Tamurkhan and his Goon Squad, actually, the Cultists, able to do good work against Valkia, so she gets brought down to like half health really quick. I did bring a Chaos Sorcerer on a Rot Beast, which makes him a really respectable armor-piercing fighter, so he was able to do pretty well in helping out against Valkia. Now Tammy's coming in with the big steel chair, and I get all my characters on the Chosen, and also the Barons of the Bog. I can't have those Chosen doing good work here, and man, they went from 75 on the weapon strength down to 45. Talk about like a bracket decrease. That is absolutely savage. So the debuff there adding up, and the Battletoads here, the Barons of the Bog, are doing an okay job at nibbling them down. Meanwhile, on the back objective, I circle around with my horsemen. Valkia is hunting them pretty effectively with some of the Hounds, but they're kiting well and getting their Throwing Axe volleys, and if we can do any damage against Valkia, I'm going to be quite happy about that. But Khorne, with their superior mobility, is going to be getting a nice ninja on my back objective, and here we can see Pestigores. You know, they don't have the best MD, not going to be able to hold up here super well against the Arwar Fleshhound in tandem with the 44 melee attack Marauder Horsemen with anti-infantry, but thankfully we have a second Pestigore. So the double Pestigores should be able to push the Khornate Warriors off, and I also did a full rotate here. I was thinking maybe I can flank them with my Marauders, pin them down and hopefully survive. But yeah, Khorne does have his triple caps right now, but you can see you have a little bit of a threat on every point. This one, I think I had like some cheap unit over there. My horsemen were capturing that, but Tamurkhan able to do really well. The Chosen of Khorne just get swarmed by a ton of units, basically. The Chaos Sorcerer, the Cultist debuffing and sundering their armor down. A lot of good stuff. And I think it was a bit of a misplay not having the Chosen of Khorne engaging with the Plague Bearers. They would have been able to massacre them pretty effectively, but unfortunately they kind of got engaged by a lot of my SEs and Toads on the more exposed flank, but it's hard to predict where that's going to happen, right? My opponent also using Brutes of the Hound, and that's pretty cool, the Arwar Berserkers, and they're no joke. So here comes our first big heal. Looking at value, I'm a little bit ahead of my opponent, but I'm not playing like a Mortis Engine or like a Festus build, so the healing isn't going to be as prevalent. But we do get a fat overcasted heal there, which is going to be healing a lot of my units. Plague Bearers, Chaos Sorcerer, you name it. Valkyrie is looking a little bit beat up. My opponent massively ahead on points, so I suspect that Khorne is going to be playing an objective-based game here and trying to just like, you know, fight on the objective for as long as they can and just win on points, which is very, very possible for sure. A couple horsemen here getting throwing attacks, more Plague Toads being called in. And the Chosen of Khorne are going to be getting nibbled into the Shadow Realm. The massive debuff Blob doing quite well as Tammy is getting the big old uppercuts with his axe. Is the Brass Cleaver or the Black Cleaver active? Doesn't look like it right now. It'd be cool if that was a passive item, but it isn't, sadly. Fleshhound's going to be intercepting Pestigores, and I'm going to be calling all my Pestigores to the middle because I was starting to feel the squeeze on the points a little bit. I was getting a little bit nervous. I didn't expect Khorne to be this durable, but like Brutes of the Hound are unbreakable, and he had 2 units of Chosen, which even though they didn't do super well, they kind of got countered a little bit. No, yeah, still 700 value is not terrible. But, you know, they hold for a long time is the point I'm trying to make. So Nurgle's Favored Son is active, giving Tamurkhan some ward save and melee defense. And we are pushing him back. You can see Curse of the Slug activated, so his horseman moved up, and I summoned a Plague Bearer on top of them, which was a really big backbreaking play. Because now they're trapped, and I did use Curse of the Slug to make sure they couldn't escape as well. With Poison, they're going to be incredibly slow. He moved them up to try and snipe my Baron to the bog, but they got caught in a bad situation, and that was a big, big W for us. On the back point, though, it's completely undefended, so that was making me a little bit nervous. I did see that my opponent's Fleshhounds and Marauders and Valkia were soon going to defeat these Pestigores, but that's why having mobility with Nurgle is so valuable, right? Like, if I had just a mouth-breathing blob, like, he would be able to push up here, and I'd have to summon, like, a slow infantry unit to deal with that. But in this case, the Marauder Horsemen are going to be able to respond to that threat and fight if need be, should be able to win against those tattered units. And now we're going to grab this point. It looks like we're going to get our clutches on it, although some more Marauders with dual weapons are on their way up. A very cost-effective infantry grinding unit. Super low MD, but against Nurgle, I guess it's not the biggest issue in the world. Although Nurgle does hit hard, they just hit slow, I suppose. So objective 3 is controlled by myself. There are some Haggard Horsemen there. My Collins are going to be some Bile Trolls. And if you want to even add more to the debuff blob, I arguably could have started with the Bile Troll unit, because Bile Trolls do lower the melee defense of nearby units, right? So if you're really going for like the full Nurgle stat line. And I have to say, guys, I thought I had the game at this point. I was like, oh man, it's going so well. But I was like, wait a second, why is this objective not flipping? And all these Khornate infantry are getting up, and they're chewing through a fair amount of my Pestigores and Chaff units, and I was really stressing this. I was like, I need to get this damn point. More Marauders coming with dual weapons. Valkyrie the Bloody helping out where she can, popping the Demon Shield, I believe, or it just wore off. Horn of Khorne going to be putting their stats up to 68 despite the debuffs. Currently, they're not being afflicted by all the debuffs because the Cultist is a little bit far away, but the units back here, these Brutes of the Hound, are, wow, look at their MD despite all the debuffing and poison I have here. It's pretty incredible. Khorne hits hard. So feeling as if I knew it was going to be a triple cap situation, I send some Marauders to the back point. My opponent responds with some Fleshhounds of Khorne, and I don't know who wins that in a straight fight. Like, that is a meaty infantry unit with 10k HP, and I'm going to miss the charge because I was really focused on the middle. So the Fleshhounds are going to get in there, but yeah, nice impact damage. We do see a lot of the Marauders being sent flying. So they take a couple hundred HP, but once the poison kicks in and that sustained grind gets a little bit messy, you know, that's when it starts to change. And finally, Tammy is going to be taking out the point in the middle here. So it looks like we're going to flip it. Barons of the Bog are still alive, still hanging in there. The Wasting Sickness spreading all over the Khornate units. As the high ground, we do get a flank with the Horsemen, so we get a full surround here, and the Doggies are going to get pinned in and poisoned, so that's pretty much a dead Fleshhound unit. My opponent does call in another Fleshhound of Khorne, which, realizing his intentions, I did use the Curse of the Slug to slow them down to 52 speed, trying to basically buy myself time to get the crumble on these hounds. Don't know if it was worth it, but as we look back to the middle, though, he managed to hold on to the point again. Just the hordes of infantry, and even though I, have better killing power here, his capture weight's very good. A lot of my initial infantry units from the beginning of the game did get grinded down due to his mass amounts of anti-infantry, and now Valkyrie probably going to be going after Bile Trolls, I would wager. Nurglings and Plague Bearers coming up. It's a slow pain, especially when you see your opponent eclipsing 1,000 points and you have a Plague Bearer coming, and that's what you're waiting for. It's a very stressful feeling. Tamurkhan going to be going after Valkia. We do have the Rancid Visitations as well, the sniping spell. So if we get Valkia low enough, we can take her out. And here Tammy's going to be getting in there and laying the big... He looks like a WWE character a little bit, doesn't he? No? I don't know, I get those vibes from him. Valkia's going to be running away. It's trailer Valkia being circle beaten by all the Nurgle warriors here. Although in the trailer it was Slaanesh, right? I think it was Slaanesh that they were fighting. Something like that. On the side here, the Fleshhound's probably going to be losing to the inevitable Tide of Nurgle. So this is a good sign for me, knowing that I have an opportunity to push up to objective 1, and knowing that like that fight's secured, and he's putting most of his assets towards the middle. Currently, this is going to be a triple cap situation. I would need to triple cap him, so I'm planning for it. In the middle, the Marauders going to be worn down most likely by the Plague Bearers, and we're pushing up and heading towards objective number 1. As far as call-ins, we're going to get some more troopers being called. It's going to be Plague Ogres with Grey Weapons. Seeing how much my opponent was spamming Fleshhounds, I figured that the Plague Ogres would be a good choice. I personally have been experimenting with Nurgle's new anti-large. I don't know how I feel about Rot Knights. I feel like they're a little bit too expensive, whereas the Plague Ogres, I don't know. I feel like Plague Ogres are a little bit more steady. Not that they're like the best unit. The Vile Trolls are arguably the most cost-effective of the three, just as a generalist unit that does okay against large. But Plague Ogres, I think if you're going for like dedicated anti-large, feels a little bit better. Granted, Plague Ogres would take a lot of damage from like an impact charge of like heavy cavalry, but I don't know, man. The Rot Knights have been underwhelming for me in a lot of situations, which is such a bummer because they're so freaking cool. It's kind of like the curse of the Skull Crusher, right? For Khorne, it's a similar situation. But what I really like is the Rot Beast characters. Being able to get your Nurgle Sorcerer on a very savvy combat character, combat mount, is great. It gives him like extra 500, 800 HP or something. Gives him armor piercing. Unfortunately, no regeneration being granted by that mount. I don't know if that was like... I think in tabletop they gave some sort of regeneration, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, hard to say. So Plague Ogres are on their way over, and we're threatening the back objective. We have a long time to get this done. And with my healing taken into account, the value lead I have is probably close to 2,000, so Tammy and company will have decent chances of getting this. We have the Sorcerer, the Chaos Sorcerer of Nurgle, holding it down against the Marauder here, while Tamurkhan continues to battle it out. And Tammy is 1,200 value, not amazing, but has been a good anchor. Nurgle's favorite son is active here, going to give ward saves. Valkia comes in to try and help out against old Tammy. The Bile Trolls moving up on the middle objective. We do have 2 Nurglings holding. They should be able to take on those Marauders, even though it is favored for Marauders. There's 2 Nurglings, and Nurglings are all about swarming and being jolly and happy. So we'll see how that works out. Tamurkhan with Nurgle's favored son and Fecundity going to be getting some fat ward save. Valkia the Bloody, certainly very vulnerable to a potential Rancid Visitations, but you have to be careful trying to snipe Valkia with like magic like that, because she has the Demon Shield, and what good Khorne players will do is they'll wait for you to try and snipe, and then they will use it. So here comes Rancid, and we're going to see if my opponent has it right now. I can't quite remember. This game was a little while ago. It is activated, and is it going to be going down 166, and down goes Valkia. So it's probably on cooldown. Nurgle's blessings were too much. Oh, that's such a cool shot. The Plague Ogres and Tamurkhan fighting together, and yeah, Plague Ogres will be money here. And I also find that Plague Ogres are better against infantry than Rot Knights are. Like, they still hit really hard against the ground troopers. So the Doggos are going to get mulched. And that's probably just going to be GG here. They're going to get mulched off the objective. We get the capture weight. Khorne just basically out of steam, sending in what they can. But Tamurkhan and the Bile Trolls plus the Plague Ogres are going to just dominate in combat. And in the middle, we're sending some Nurglings in to be safe. But really, my opponent not going to be able to hold it long enough. Tamurkhan getting very close to dying. The Feast of the Maggot Lord would be cool, but there's no heroes left. And also, I believe it only targets ground-based units. He can't like snipe things up in the air with that ability. But yeah, GG, well played to my opponent. It was a really fun tournament match, and it's good to see Khorne doing well. Khorne has been performing like quite solid. I've been watching a lot of high-level tournament games and seeing them in people's pick 3s and stuff. But I still think Khorne is one of the weaker factions, like a lower mid-tier faction, I would say. They're better than Skaven. They're way better than Skaven, way better than Vampire Coast, but they're not like, you know, better than B-tier factions. I would say they're kind of a B-tier faction. Nurgle, I think, is like in there as well. Nurgle's like an upper B-tier faction. Khorne would be a lower one. If I had to give my overall sentiment on this matchup, I would say overall Nurgle versus Khorne is probably slightly Nurgle favored, especially with some of the new toys they got. So I'm really excited for Khorne to get some love, because all they really needed was some cost reductions and then some new units, obviously, would go a long way. Vile Trolls at 900. Plague Ogres did well when they were able to get in. Barons of the Bog at 1400. Not bad at all. Tammy, 17. Sorcerer, you know, Cultist, all doing their nice debuffs. So that was fun. GG, well played to solo. We'll see you guys next time. And that is going to be it for today.